Okay, we're back. We're live for the noon o'clock show on a given Monday. Energy 808, the cutting edge. And we have with us today Kim Keahiolalo, okay, who joins us from Provision Solar in Hilo on the Big Island. And we're so happy to have her with us. And we want to talk to her about many things, but especially today, including a status report on the solar in the state of Hawaii. Welcome to the show, Kim.
Thank you, Jay. Well, I'd like to kick it off with some good news, and this is for the whole state. Some of the state tax credits for solar were on the chopping block last week, but we averted a disaster and it died in committee or died in conference, so to speak. So our solar tax credits for the state of Hawaii are intact and as they were. So that is a huge relief to all of us in the industry.
Well, this has been a strange session that bill would even get considered in a time when we should be, developing our energy sector. So good.
Yeah.
So that's good. We have heard that. So I hope that next year they actually increase the solar tax credits and fix up the battery tax credits, which they should have done years ago. Want to talk about that? What do you want to see next year from the legislature?
It would be great to see an incentive for adding batteries to homes because it does help to stabilize the grid and um, and soak up extra energy that's being generated during the daytime. So to incentivize people to put a battery pack in as part of their solar system, that reduces the amount of excess energy that would end up otherwise on the grid and may or may not be used while it's being produced.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. I'm really interested. For example, and it all trips off something that Marco and I talked about a couple of times ago, and that is that in September of 2022, not this year but next year, coal is done. I think it was last year, the legislature passed a bill that said there will be no further extension or renewal or use of coal as a source of energy in the state of Hawaii, uh, starting in September 2022. Now, that put a lot of pressure on the utility because they are still using coal, AES coal, I think. And the problem with that is that we may not be able to replace the coal in terms of generating electricity between now and September 2022. And the PUC has expressed some concern, some sharp concern, if you will, about the plan of the utility, that is Hawaiian Electric, to actually get up to a level where they can drop coal in September 2022. So from what you say, it seems to me that the secret going forward, or one of the secrets going forward, is to use the battery power that individual homeowners and business owners will have if we have a wider distribution, a wider proliferation of battery, storage in the state of Hawaii. And that would mean that we, that would take the place, arguably, at least to some degree, of coal, because people would be storing solar power and then essentially selling it back, giving it back, however the deal is, to the utility. And that would mean the utility has to generate less power itself because it is getting more power from storage facilities. And furthermore, it's a technology of this contribution to the utilities' electrical resources can be done with good technology, software, and so forth. And then you have a community effort, at replacing the loss of power from the loss of coal. Can you talk about that? How would that work? Is that the grid services thing we were talking about before the show began? Can you talk about it?
Sure. Ideally, there would be enough generation, distributed generation, as opposed to coming from a central power plant to meet not only the needs of the homes and businesses, but to also generate extra power to be or energy rather to go into the batteries. And so if we had a more widespread adoption of solar and batteries, those those batteries could provide power at nighttime. It's a tall order, and it would be, I would say, it would require an aggressive advancement of both technologies as far as adoption goes. The technology is there. We just need to encourage people to adopt it. And
Yeah, that goes to your point about the legislature. If the legislature made it easier, I mean, the thing is that these things are doable. It's not rocket science. It's not magic. If the legislature decided in its infinite wisdom that it wanted to have a solar panel on every roof, and a battery in every garage, and a chicken in every pot, it could do that. All it's got to do is incentivize. It's not rocket science to figure out how to do that. And if you do it right, then what will happen is there will be uh, grid services everywhere. Am I right? It's just a matter of tuning up the system.
yeah, it's just a different way of doing business, and sometimes it's hard for large corporations to switch their way of doing business, which is why it takes innovators like Swell Energy, who's on Oahu now, um, setting up accounts with people who have solar and batteries in an agreement with the utility where they could actually sell some of the power that's in their batteries back to the utility company. Um, in times of need when there's grid instability or when there's a high demand. So I think this test pilot project over on Oahu is going to tell us a lot about how it works. And there is actually an incentive there. We don't know exactly what it's going to be, but people would be able to be compensated for allowing the utility to take some energy out of their battery to feed the grid.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a bunch of variables that you have to resolve there. One is they have to have the battery. So you need legislative action to give them an incentive to do the battery, at least to do a lot of batteries for a lot of people around the state. And then you'll have a lot more storage. Okay, there'll be a resource available to the utility. That'll be good.
Right.
But then you've got to have somebody that can facilitate. I mean, my initial thought about Swell is that why doesn't the utility do this itself? Why does it need somebody in the middle? Why doesn't it just get the software together and decide on a price and have the PUC approve that all of that? And then, there won't be somebody else we have to pay, another contractor, so to speak, in between the homeowner who has the battery and the utility who wants to buy it. But I guess what we have is we have a situation where, in the fullness of the arrangement between the utility and the homeowner, we need somebody. We need Swell to do that. And
Right. And utility companies have to hire contractors to operate power plants. And, there's costs associated with that as well. But even if it does cost money to bring in a company to organize all this and get it set up, you're still dealing with a free input, which is solar, which is the sun. And you're saving money right there because you don't have to go out on the open market and buy sun that day, or as like you have to with other fuels, fossil fuels in particular, where you have to go out onto the open market and bid on coal or oil. Um, so I would hope that the savings associated with the free input would offset the cost of administering the program.
oh, I hope so. Yeah. So
Just
what
change
what happened? Go ahead.
Change is painful sometimes.
That's what it amounts to, and you need change agents, and swell sounds like a swell change agent is what it is. I mean, in the end, at the end of the day, we may not need swell because the utility may decide to take this in-house. It may be, not so hard after all. But
Right.
but let's look at the economics for a minute. So if I'm the homeowner, let's take an average homeowner. I have solar. I'm going to get solar. I have a battery, or I'm going to get a battery, and I'm going to be incentivized, hopefully, for so more people will have batteries. Okay, so I pay money to have the solar installed. I pay money to have the battery installed. Okay, so I need to amortize that expense. Okay, then on the other side of it, the utility that needs a break, especially because of this coal thing. It needs to have other sources that are wired right into it, and I think that's part of it, isn't it? From an engineering point of view, it's wired right in. We don't have to build a new plant. We don't have to, go out and do anything. We don't have to do any construction. Nothing. It's already wired. That's good. So the utility should be willing to pay something because otherwise the utility would have to pay, for the power. And the question then is how much does the utility pay? And how much does Swell want? And who pays Swell? Is it the utility? Is it the homeowner? And of course, the big issue, and this happened before with was it net metering and all that, all these experimental, I should say experimental, because at the time they were not experimental, they were the deal. All these other approaches to this issue. How much, if you're a homeowner, how much money you want to help amortize what you put in? And if the utility, how much are you willing to pay to cover the cost of this additional resource of energy? Has that been established? What are your thoughts on that?
No, we're still waiting for term sheets to find out what the deal is going to be. Um, but I think one of the upsides of having a contractor or a company like Swell come in is it takes a lot of the risk off the plate of the utility company instead of them trying to implement this and come up with the whole plan and allocate resources and administrative resources to this, to just to bring these guys in and do a pilot program and see if it works, and if it works well enough, then maybe hand it over. But what if you have solar and your new bill from the utility company is now $25? What if you were to make $25 a month selling a little bit of your energy back to the utility? You would then effectively have no utility bill. So even if it was just a little bit, I think people would get excited about it because it's offsetting their minimum charges or something like that. What do you think?
Well, I think of somebody like Provision Solar or any number of other installers at the moment of sale, if you will, when you're selling a system to a homeowner. And you got a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet is the magic, right? This is what you're going to have to pay. This is going to be your return. It's a business deal, and it's actually a sort of entrepreneurial on the part of the homeowner because he could just sit and do what most people do. Buy power from the utility company on the hub and the spoke kind of arrangement,
Hmm.
where it's not distributed. You just buy it from the utility as we have been from the beginning of time. So now the spreadsheet is different. Okay. The spreadsheet includes what it's going to cost, either on a purchase or a rental or installment sale, however the various alternatives to buy a solar system. And it's
Hmm.
going to include, storage. And then it's going to include the incentive, whatever the incentive is from the legislature. I don't think they do that. And finally, here's a whole new item. And this is the grid services number on the spreadsheet that says, oh, and you can get some money back. And so here is your net cost, or for that matter, as you suggest, maybe you'll even make some money. So it's a really attractive deal. Now that could be in its own right another incentive. to get all those guys who have been reluctant, hesitant, put solar on their roof. Maybe now they'll see it differently. And the utility will see it differently because they don't have to, build anything. They don't have to, keep going with coal, which is so unpopular with everyone. And so this is it's a win-win-win-win-win thing, I think. Am I saying what you expect I would say?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds. It sounds too good to be true, but I believe it's gonna happen. I'm very analytical, so I want to know. I want to see the numbers. I don't want to put these numbers in front of a person until I know really what to expect. And um, but
Well, sure, if you're
I.
out there and you're the salesman, the estimator, so to speak, and
Mhm.
you have this spreadsheet, you want to be able to defend the spreadsheet, and you don't want to make a transaction, make a deal with a homeowner based on a spreadsheet that turns out to be untrue.
Right.
So you have to have a certain amount of faith, confidence in whatever you're putting there. And if you're putting some kind of grid services payment to the homeowner, you want to be sure that comes true.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're gonna wait and see how it goes. We we're very cautious and pretty conservative at Provision Solar, so we're gonna wait and see how it goes. And if it looks like a good deal, then we'll definitely be sharing it with our customers.
Yeah. Well, okay. That's a valuable piece. I think that could change things, but only if the numbers are, constitute incentive to the average homeowner. How else, how are people reacting in COVID? One reaction I might have is I don't have that much confidence in the grid as it goes forward. I don't have that much confidence in government, if you will. So I want to be more independent. Remember the time when everybody wanted to be, off the grid completely. Some people successfully did that, but there weren't many of them actually. And some people, said, I don't care. I'll stay tethered. How do you think COVID and our situation right now, I mean, the statewide situation right now, affects um, affects people who might consider going off the grid?
Well, there's definitely a push towards independence. I mean, we've been baking our own bread and growing our own tomatoes. And I think, generating your own electricity just falls right in there with that self-sufficiency movement that is even pre-COVID, where people are realizing that the more independent they can be, the more freedom they can have. Um, but I'm a proponent of using the infrastructure that we have already. And if you're going to be doing something like grid services, you're you're also part of the grid in a way that you're actually giving back to the grid and profiting a little bit from it as well. So it's more of a community mindset. And I definitely saw that happening with COVID, where we kind of locked down and we're like, okay, here we all are, um, and we can't always rely on outside sources to keep us sustained.
I think that point is it's just everywhere these days. We're in a kind of a biblical test. Are we going to care about our neighbor or not? We're going to care about the community or not? And it emerges in so many different contexts. Like, for example, anti-vaxxers. They're out there, and there's a huge number of them. I mean, there was an article in the Times this morning about how we really have to give up on national herd immunity because there are so many people who are refusing to take the vaccine. And the government is, doing incentives and paying cash in some places, some states, to have people accept the vaccine. And the people have an odd lot of reasons for not accepting the vaccine. But the bottom line for all of this is, do you care about your neighbor or not? It's not just a choice you make for your own self. It's a choice you make for your community. And I find that this is sort of an extraordinary moment where we find so many people who don't give a rip about the community, don't want to take the vaccine, even though they got a lousy reason for it, or a whole bunch of lousy reasons for it.
Mhm.
The issue is raised. Why don't you support your neighbor? Why don't you be part of a community that supports itself? And I hope we go the right direction on that tilt. But that's the same tilt you're talking about. Do you want to care about your neighbor?
Yeah, I mean, no man is an island. You can try, but I think we all. Um, I think there's a lot of value in interdependence,
That's where
right?
we live, you
Yeah,
know?
it's um, there's a lot more that we can do as a group collectively for the betterment of mankind than we can just do by running away and isolating.
Yeah. Well, what Ben Franklin say we can hang together or hang separate.
Yeah, there you go.
So let's talk about the other thing, and that is the COVID money that's coming into town. That that would help, install solar and storage, and
Yeah.
that would help companies. I don't know if you'd call it infrastructure. Infrastructure is not a word that we would attach to it right now, but I would. I would. But what
Yeah.
is happening? Is there relief coming from the federal government on installing solar
Um,
and small business?
well, there is a program that has been around for many generations that's pretty underutilized and undersubscribed, if you will. And it's a grant for small businesses and agricultural producers. And anybody on the Big Island is qualified. And it's from the US Department of Agriculture, and it's part of their rural development program, which has been around since the days of Lincoln. And these people are here to help. And what they have is money to offset the cost of a solar installation if you're a small business or you're an agricultural producer. This
That's not COVID money. It's not
It's
part of
not.
Joe
It's
Biden's
not.
initiative.
It's been around for centuries
Well, if
almost.
you attach it to Lincoln, I suppose it would be a Republican initiative then, eh?
Yeah. Yeah, it's part of the Farm Bill, which is a massive bill that gets passed by Congress every year. And there's a local USDA representative in every city. If you're interested in doing a grant to offset the cost of your solar system, I recommend either calling Provision Solar, and we can tell you pretty quickly whether or not you're eligible. And also the USDA offices, just go in and as a friendly gesture, introduce yourself to these folks.
What are the economics? How much money is available? How much money can you get?
There's
Um,
a
what
lot of money available, and
interesting.
it is, like I said, undersubscribed. It's a grant, so it's free money. And there is some paperwork, but it will cover 25% of the cost of your solar installation. So I have a case study, and we can just do a quick little video here to show the property we did. So Jay, this is an oyster farm on the Big Island, and they utilized the USDA REAP grant, and REAP stands for Rural Energy for America program, and there's baby oysters right there on the screen.
Is this in Nelha?
No, this is over in Puna, and it's a privately owned company, and they have been farming oysters on the West Coast in Washington for decades. And due to ocean acidification from all the carbon that's been pumped into the atmosphere over the last 100 years, um, the carbonic acid that's in the ocean, it's making it very difficult for oysters to hatch, and because the water is too acidic. So this farmer came over to the Big Island and found that the waters in Hawaii were much sweeter, and he started an oyster hatchery so that he could feed seeds to his oyster farms in Washington and other farms. Once the oysters get enough of a shell around them and mature enough, they can actually handle the ocean water on the West Coast. But they are hatched over here at this big oyster hatchery, and he the farmer, obviously saw the value in renewable energy. For him, it was really economic because without being able to hatch oysters, he was pretty much going to go out of business, as well as a lot of oyster farmers on the West Coast. So I know for me, this just ticks a lot of boxes because we have this climate change situation. Ocean acidification is affecting our hatcheries, and then you bring in renewable energy, and you bring in the US Department of Agriculture here, who is saying, oh, you've got a $380,000 project you want to do. We'll give you $95,000 to do it. And you can still use all your tax credits. You can use your federal tax credit, your state tax credit. And a solar system for a business can be depreciated on an accelerated schedule. So just like a truck you would buy, or a tractor, or a computer, you can accelerate the depreciation on that. When you combine the grant with the state and federal tax incentives and the depreciation, uh, you pretty much have your system paid for itself within 3 years. So
I can see the spreadsheet now.
yeah, and this grant is, it's paperwork. It's a federal grant. There's forms to fill out, but we can help with that, and we have grant writers who can actually put the grant together. It's just so worth it. And the enrollment, or the applications can be accepted any time of year, and the awards are announced twice a year. So, there might be a little bit of a wait, but heck, it's free money, and it's just for small businesses, and it's just for ag producers. So we did the oyster farm, we've done other farms on the island, but we've also done small businesses. um,
Oh, that's great. That you're really doing a service, because the average person doesn't know from federal grants, you know.
well,
He may know how to do his tax return, but filing a federal grant, usually you need help,
yeah,
especially if you've never done it before.
yeah, and we know how the points are scored, and so we can size it up pretty quickly. And we have great support from the USDA folks at our local offices. They'll check over the grant application and make sure everything is good. If they have any questions, they'll get back to us to make any corrections. I'm not going to say it's 100% guaranteed, but you have a very high probability of getting some of this funding. And you could also use it for energy efficiency. You can do pumps and all.
Doesn't have to be for oysters.
It doesn't have to be. You can do digesters and lighting and all kinds of different technologies. And there's also a USDA loan that's a government backed loan
In addition,
in addition to the grant. Yeah. So, and there's just a lot of opportunities out there. I know people that run small businesses, and especially farmers, they're very busy people. So we want to help them. We want to make it as,
oh,
easy as possible for them to get.
it's a great market, Kim. That's important. Well, this is the last area I want to talk to you about is that farms to be to stay alive, to function these days, need sources of cheap energy or cheaper energy. And we know farms that have gone out of business because the energy costs too much. And if we want to incentivize farms and agriculture, we we need to give them cheap energy, and we need to give them programs like this. This
Yeah,
could mean the difference between having a farm or not. This could mean the difference between having an agricultural industry on the Big Island or not.
right. Yeah, pumping water uses a lot of energy. And if that becomes prohibitive for the farmer, then that could be the end of their venture. So um, that's why the USDA is there. They want to help people.
Mm. And that's an element in our own, statewide sustainability, and to have
Foods,
agriculture here,
yeah,
food security,
food
all that.
security. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
right.
that's
Because
really a new idea, isn't it, for the solar installer industry to help farmers this way, to make
mhm.
it possible for them to get solar installations this way.
Yeah, and you're going to have a lot of people say it's too expensive to have a farm on the Big Island or in Hawaii because all just the inputs are too high. And how can I make a profit? Because I'm not going to sell my produce for my cucumbers for $20 each, right? You're competing against these mainland companies and who have access to pretty cheap inputs. So if we can offset that by bringing down the cost of the renewable energy. And then once that energy system is in, they're going to be saving money, for decades to come.
Yeah, this is great. It's great because agriculture is so important to us.
We
And
all need to eat. We all need to eat, right?
especially when, for one reason or another, the ship does not come in with the imported food. We have to be sustainable and
Yeah,
resilient against in extreme weather and all those things that could affect our ability to get food.
right,
So agriculture is extremely important to the future of Hawaii,
right.
in a way more important now than it ever has been with climate change. And so what you're doing is right on the, I was going to say right on the money, right on the trail
Yeah.
of creating resilience and sustainability.
Yeah. Well, I'm on a mission. I want all the farms to have some renewable energy and just to strengthen them and ensure their longevity.
It's a great thing, a great market you're moving into. It has implications even beyond grid services. It has implications to the industrial base of the state, the food base, the agricultural base. So carry on, will you, Kim?
Okay.
That's Kim Keahiolalo,
Mhm.
joining us from Provision Solar in Hilo, Hawaii, talking about energy. I hope you come back soon, Kim, because I have a lot of questions about other issues that relate to renewable energy on the Big Island and thus in the state of Hawaii itself. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jay. Aloha.
Aloha.